Tiffany Fontenot here. What is reverse speech? God made our brain in two hemispheres, and He made our consciousness in two different directions. The forward direction is the free will direction where we can lie or tell the truth. But in reverse, that is an involuntary system, and we cannot lie from that side of our consciousness.
Stand up against the poison of white supremacy, as I did my inaugural address, to single out as the most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy. And I'm not saying this because I'm at a black HBCU. I say it wherever I go. I'm not saying this because I'm
This is how they're weaponizing it. Spang is sound about word licensing. Spang is sound about word licensing. Spang is sound about word licensing.
Lasers. When you see the movies or you look at comic books or television shows, when you see laser weapons, they tend to be a color, right? Red or green or something like that. Real lasers, one of the key advantages that they provide is that they are invisible. You actually can't see them. You just see this damage suddenly starting to blow something up. So if we take a look now at what the Athena did to a truck. So we're looking at a truck engine, and the Athena within seconds was able to beam right in there, heat the whole thing up, and burn through the engine of this vehicle. So if you can imagine if you were in that vehicle, all of a sudden, this hole would start appearing in your engine, and the whole thing would just disappear. That's what these lasers do. Now, there's some other key advantages that we should mention. Let me give you 3 of them. 1, unlimited ammo. As long as we have power, we have an unlimited magazine. And downrange, of course, having unlimited ammo can be a huge advantage. Second, it's silent. You don't give the enemy any advance warning that it's coming. And then the third one I wanted to touch on is that it travels at the speed of light. So not only are we delivering powerful, decisive effects, lethality, we're also doing it so rapidly they don't know what hit them. So if you could circle back to that example of being in the car again, that would happen so instantaneously, within seconds, you truly would have no idea what was happening.
Scientists have built a silent sound beam that lifts and moves objects without touching them. At a Precision Acoustics lab in Denmark, researchers have engineered an invisible tractor beam made entirely of sound waves. It allows them to levitate, rotate, and steer small solid objects through midair without any wires, magnets, or contact. What's even more astonishing is that the system works silently, operating below the human hearing threshold. The beam works by generating complex 3D acoustic fields using phased arrays of ultrasonic speakers. These waves interfere in specific patterns, forming pressure pockets that act like invisible hands in space. The object, be it a droplet, a piece of metal, or a microsensor, is trapped inside and gently moved by adjusting the wave field. Traditional acoustic levitation is limited to simple up and down hovering. But this new design creates dynamic vortexes and knots in the air, allowing researchers to move objects around corners, rotate them in 3D, and even stack them all in complete silence. The system is precise down to millimeters and works with solid, liquid, or even some gel-like materials.
I'm telling you, I'm getting the fuck off. No, you better listen. No, you better listen. No, you better listen.
It's the weirdest thing. Elijah, can you hear this speaker? Yeah, I can hear it. Somehow, my microphone picks up nothing right next to it, but Elijah can hear it from down the road. Now, sound waves are always directional to a degree, but this thing is on a whole other level. Perhaps magic? Spoiler, no. The Oddfly Model B uses ultrasonic audio waves, which you normally can't hear, and adds some special sauce to create a directional speaker that's designed to create a private listening zone, giving the user a headphone-like experience. Is that something people are asking for?
nanotechnology, the future of nanotechnology. You may already be familiar, some of you, with the present of nanotechnology. We're going to go way out, okay? We're going to take a trip into the future today. That's happening already. This is already happening. These are, it's called here nanoscale robots. In other words, there are nanoscale devices that go into the brain. In this experiment, not into the human brain. They're doing this in insects. Not into the human brain.
Getting the fuck off!
From parcel and food delivery to on-demand data services, commercialized drone fleets will soon move from the realm of science fiction and into communities around the world. This move toward commercialized drone utilization will reduce the significant costs, congestion issues, and the environmental impacts that currently exist within the delivery supply chain, while also creating new business models for other on-demand delivery services. And fog computing is the technological breakthrough that will make this change a reality. Here's how. Fog's distributed open architecture helps to overcome the challenges associated with drone fleet deployment and automation by moving computation, communication, control, and storage activities down below cloud level. A hierarchy of fog node deployments makes this possible. Within each drone, embedded fog nodes perform sophisticated analytic, navigation, coordination, sensing, and control operations. On the ground, fog nodes placed at drone perch locations and at various other street-level locations keep drones connected to the internet and to each other. This eliminates bandwidth bottlenecks and latency issues associated with streaming data to the cloud. This is a drone hub, also called a roost. Regional and roost-level fog nodes gather data from the ground and with it enable situational awareness for the fleet. This allows for better collision prevention, greater fault detection, and enhanced fleet security. Cross-carrier communication and rigorous adherence to safety, regulatory, and operational requirements can now all be achieved. Software patch deployments and system upgrades happen without delay or disruption. And citywide geographically dispersed fog nodes assist with yet higher level functionalities, including fleet-level air traffic control and coordination. These are just some of the ways that fog computing is helping to set the stage for drone commercialization. Cleaner, less congested roadways, more efficient supply chains, and more satisfied customers. Discover today how the Open Fog Consortium and our open architectural framework are helping to enable drone commercialization and other innovations made possible by fog computing.
So here she is, Courtney Boccia Ross. Basically, she's testifying about George Floyd's death. Well, that whole thing, there were people all around him, even those that are claimed to be his family members, that were making money off of him according to what his reverse speech and everybody else's is indicating. As a TI, it says the AI was hitting his feet.
We were called code 2, which means non-emergent, to a mouth injury. complaint with getting out of the car. No, I need some help, guys. This week. No, I need some help, guys. This week. No, I need some help, guys. This week.
We are breaking in to hear from the mother of George Floyd's daughter and that daughter, 6-year-old Gianna Floyd. Let's listen in.
I don't have a lot to say because I can't get my words together right now. But I wanted everybody to know that this is what those officers took from. At the end of the day, they get to go home and be with their families. Gianna does not have a father. He will never see her grow up, graduate. He will never walk her down the aisle. If it's a problem she's having and she needs her dad, she does not have that anymore. I'm here for my baby. And I'm here for George. I'm here for my baby. And I'm here for George. George, leave my hand. Yeah, I'm not looking up. George, leave my hand. Yeah, I'm not looking up. George, leave my hand. Yeah, I'm not looking up.
Well, they hit your extremities, your hands and feet with the AI. It's an AI interface. They're using transceivers and apps. Okay, so they've lied. That's what Sabrina's saying. They've lied. They're war hawks. This transhuman system they're trying to bring in. These lunatics. Everybody's missing these lunatics that have lied. They're war hawks sending a transceiver there, and here is the app. But she says SEER. She says it. SEER. SERE is torture training. It's a torture training metaphor that's showing up. Well, that's the acronym for torture training for our military.
Wow.
So she's making hostage. So she must hostage. So it seems like she was also profiting off of that in some way. She has to do torture training by taking a hostage connected to money and under the table deals that they're sliding us to muck everything up. Where we are missing the warhawk lunatics that have lied, who are sending a transceiver and using apps. That's going to connect to this LoRa network. She's saying there is a Musk who is paying this network. Well, who is the biggest DoD contractor? It's Elon Musk. One of the biggest DoD contractors. And they're rolling this shit out. So these people are getting DoD contracts third-party contracts to roll this shit out. And they're getting paid very well. And how are they getting paid? Using our tax dollars. So who's benefiting from that money? You know, they're getting paid through their Musk for torture training, taking hostages. I could go even further, because before I was overtly targeted, the day before, it was getting progressively heavier, and I didn't know what was happening. I just knew I was having a hard time making my chest go up and down because it felt like something was tight and pushing against it. It was these fields. And I was told three things through this hive net, this over $5 billion hive net that our tax dollars have paid for, this Obama totalitarian over $5 billion hive net that's been rolled out worldwide in successive steps. This has been going on for decades. They've been walking us down this ridiculous transhuman shithole. They said hostage crisis and Helen of Troy. And they also said and a hostage crisis. That's the SEER training. So if you ask what is SEER, what do you get? Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape is a training program best known by its military acronym that prepares U.S. military personnel, U.S. Department of Defense civilians, and private military contractors to survive and return with honor in survival scenarios.
For survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. It's a program to help prepare U.S. Special Forces for whatever they might encounter if captured. Now, I have over 40,000 hours observing SEER interrogation techniques. Bruce here has more than that.
Observing as opposed to?
I took a course in conducting interrogations as well. I would reverse engineer these SEER techniques to induce learned helplessness. Can you explain what that means, reverse engineer? Instead of using these techniques to protect our people, we use them to achieve compliance in the detainees. Our plan involves using individual assessments of detainees to create a program designed to induce debility, dependency, and dread. We call these the 3Ds. And there's science to back this up.
D&D. Excuse me, Dr. Mitchell. Can you elaborate on the techniques you'll be employing?
Absolutely. The attention grasp, wallet, facial hold, facial slap or insult slap, cramped confinement, wall standing, stress positions, sleep deprivation, one morning, use of insects, and mock burials.
Okay, they are doing all of that stuff
From my perspective, this seems
with
like
radiation
a
weapons,
game changer.
simulating all of those things with radiation weapons.
So it's torture training. So it comes up when you're torturing someone to train them. You see, that's the metaphor. When you're torturing somebody, they're trying to torture us to get somewhere with this. It's mind control. You see?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things, and one of the things is that torture training.
And there's a reason why I'm getting the fuck off! Technique now, was he restrained it? Technique now, was he restrained it? Technique now, was he restrained it?
Okay.
Wow.
So connected to the reason for getting off the plane is it's connected to torture training and or being burned, and something she is experiencing feeling connected to a drone network. So this appears to be a civilian torture program and the global 3D sonar Internet of Bodies control grid being brought up. That's the reason they threw so much shit on top of that, because they didn't want that coming out. Now, when you FOIA the terror screening database, where they're using the Patriot Act to torture, to justify, they pretend they pretend in public that you are a domestic terrorist, and they throw you on the watch list. And it's a little bit like when somebody comes up to you and stomps on your foot and says, "Hey, you stomped on my foot." So they accuse you of stomping on their foot when really they're the aggressor. And then they fill out a SAR, an SAR, a suspicious activity report. This person stepped on my foot. And then you're on the terrorist watch list. But they've already had an FBI whistleblower who has said, some of the people on that list are there under secret criteria, which is illegal. You are not allowed, that was not created. There should not be a torture going on the planet anywhere in the first place. Because if you're torturing people, you're not trying to get the truth. Regardless of what they say, you're not trying to punish them. You're not trying to get the truth. You're torture training them for mind control and enslavement. That is what you are doing. Period. I don't care who you're doing it to or who's doing it. Torture doesn't work. They know that. That's not their goal. It's not their goal. Okay, and I put that in my letter to Congress, who totally ignored me. And one business day later, that I bet they used that Twitter backdoor illegal government portal that was discovered by Dr. Shiva, to Twitter. I bet they used that because and told them to permanently suspend me, because one business day later, I was permanently suspended on Twitter, back when it was Twitter, right before it became X, and X is used by Satanists.
Right.
And X is the name of Elon Musk's son.
Here's Freeman Fly explaining what this X within an O represents.
Now, curiously enough, I didn't really know much about Nodens. And I had to look into this. And Nodens was known as the only named elder god and the lightning war god. And his symbol is an O with an X. Now this is, according to the practices of the Ordo Templi Ontis, the mark of the beast. And of course they put it on the beast, right? And Marvel, of course owned by Disney now, is implanting this into the children.
And just to prove that this symbol is of high significance to the dark forces, here's High Priest of the Church of Satan, Diabolus Rex, showing one of his many body implants.
Do you care if we got a view of your back one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you got, that's the mark of the beast right there. So you got the X.
In the O.
I'm going to give you this.
The X and the O.
Yep.
If you could actually see this in its complete form, because it's still actually shrinking a little bit.
So the X within the O is the mark of the beast.
A lot of people are speculating about what this X symbol actually means for Elon Musk. Now, one major thing that stands out, when you mirror this symbol, it forms a Freemasonic symbol. You're probably wondering, what does Freemasonry have to do with the letter X or the symbol X? So if you look at the part that I have highlighted, you'll see that Freemasonry early on latched onto the letter X exactly because of the paranormal significance as a sign of Lucifer. So the Freemasons use the letter X in ritual ceremonies, and with that they will encounter raw spiritual energy. And Tesnar, who's a 33rd degree masonry, says we begin to glimpse the spiritual power which is available to the person who is able to access it. So you put all this together and you know that Freemasons represent duality. You see the black and white with the X symbol that Elon has, and SpaceX, the Model X is his vehicle. He named his kid X. And we all know that Elon calls it the Everything app. Well, that goes hand in hand with duality. Duality is everything, good and bad, positive and negative, happy and sad. We all know how the Freemason checkerboard represents duality, the black and white. We see that the X symbol is black and white. Another nod to Baphomet, the goat head that Elon wore on his costume. So all this stuff goes hand in hand. The symbol X is much deeper than we think.
We're going to be exploring the philosophy or religion, according to Yuval Noah Harari, called Dadaism, as he claims you're a biological algorithm. You have no soul. There is no importance to human experience. There is no such thing as love. You, as a biological entity, really aren't that important. Humanity as we know it, he believes by 2050, will no longer exist. Humanity is going to merge itself with the Internet of all things. And this is basically another way for him to talk about an AI processing God.
This is an MQ-9 Reaper drone, easily distinguished from other aircraft by its opaque canopy. That's because the pilot sits here, even as this Reaper flies over the high plains of New Mexico. This portable container is called a ground control station, or GCS, which can be up to 1,600 miles away from the drone. That's about the distance from New York City to Puerto Rico. Once the craft is in the air, controls are handed over via satellite control to a second crew known as the Mission Control Element. This crew handles the specific aspects of a mission's objectives. When the mission is complete, the controls are handed back to the Launch and Recovery Element, which is then responsible for landing the drone safely.
Basically, it appears to be in a state of shock and confusion.
Now, you can FOIA, like I said before, you can FOIA that list. Even though it's not classified, you're not going to get a hold of it because you are not a public-private partnership value chain member. So thousands of businesses are cannibalizing bodies all over the planet with this technology. But the people who are being tortured by it will not get access to it. So there are people on the torture list that include children, adults, elderly. There's a Down syndrome person on it, handicapped people. There's tons of people who have been murdered and made disabled. I've been made disabled. My dad was murdered. My first husband was murdered. They will drive you into having surgeries. They drove my dad and he had to have a liver transplant, hip surgeries, knee surgeries. They ablated my right knee tissue, totally took it out. Took him a month to go all the way across it. Somebody came through across the comm system and he said, "I'm sorry." I was screaming and in absolute total discomfort and crying and screaming. And this guy said, I came across and said, "I'm sorry, I have to do this to you." And I bawled that asshole out. I'm like, you don't have to do anything. This is the whole problem here. You don't have to do any of this shit. These are unlawful orders these people are following. And they know it. It makes them sleep at night to pretend that they're actually hitting terrorists. And they should know damn well by now that they are not hitting terrorists. So the FBI, there have been 2 FBI whistleblowers. One said some on that list are there under secret criteria. The secret is out. They are running money from suffering, scamming. One of my friends who was married to a billionaire Satanist DoD contractor. These are money from suffering cults who are they're dominating. It's slave and master is how they're operating. They're just totally, absolutely insane. The wheel has to be taken back. So. Yeah. And the uppers in the FBI whistleblower said they get $30,000 to $50,000 per head that they put on that list.
Wow.
So they're profiting from the suffering and torture and murder of civilians.
The Section 702 program was passed because our intelligence community needed new 21st century tools to obtain critical information about foreign threats to our national security. But far too often and for far too long, these programs have been turned into a backdoor to monitor the emails and the phone calls of American citizens who are not national security threats.
The NDAA is complete. I have been assigned to be a conferee on the conference. Here, we're going to follow me. We're getting in an elevator. And we didn't get to participate at all. As a matter of fact, the whole NDAA deal was made between Speaker Johnson, Chuck Schumer, and the House Committee. And people like me, we didn't get to participate. And we were appointed to participate to make sure no money for abortion, no money for trans, for members like me standing up for Americans who are sick and tired of funding the Ukraine war. We had taken the $300 million out of the defense bill. Well, let me tell you what the final product is and the deal that was made. So the policy is in place. That funding is there for abortion travel. The policy is still in place for trans and the military and everything that goes with it. Democrat trans policy, Democrat abortion policy. $300 million for Ukraine is back in the NDA, even though I had worked hard to take it out, it's back in. And furthermore, here's the worst news. It gets a clean FISA extension through April. No change to the FISA court whatsoever. Nothing changed, and that deal was made also.
Believe it or they cannot believe it. That motherfucker back there is not real. Well, you're wrong. There is not. Go for the mud. Go for the mud.
you run? There is no freedom for the mud. No freedom mud. Will you run? There is no freedom for the mud. No freedom mud.
The true way that this technology works is that a complete DNA profile is obtained from the target, from the individual, the targeted individual. And then this information, the DNA of the individual, is used to determine the resonant frequency of the DNA itself. The resonant frequency is then used to fine-tune the technology, the radio frequency signals, the microwave auditory effect, and all of the other aspects of the technology to tune it perfectly to the resonant frequency of the targeted individual's DNA. And they can read your thoughts verbatim as they occur within your own mind. So that when that person goes to speak out about it, when they go to seek help from their fellow human beings, and their fellow human beings say, what is it that's happening to you? The target will then say, I'm hearing voices inside my head.
But these would be controlled hallucinations run by algorithms.
And they will conclude that this person must be crazy. And as a result, they will recommend psychological evaluation for that person. You can see the way this is going to go and the way it is going right now. As good people, helpless people that are being abused and tortured and enslaved and experimented upon in America today, American citizens cry out for help from their fellow Americans, and their fellow Americans say, why don't you take some Prozac because we think you're schizophrenic? Well, this is a highly technical program. All of the symptoms are induced by a technology that is so fucking sophisticated, it is horrifying beyond description.
Plain as day.
So
I hear it perfectly.
That indicates the torture.
It never happened in this country, maybe in Hitler's Germany or something. And then I find out the MK Ultra thing, that exactly that was done in over 200 medical schools and mental hospitals.
What is MK Ultra? I don't recall that.
That was the program, the CI's program for under the Technical Services Division to experiment on population centers with disease and drugs.
And what years was this?
It started in the 50s and lasted until the 70s when Jack Anderson began to expose it, and then the media caught onto it, and the Congress investigated, and the CI, by the way, destroyed thousands of files of victims, people that had experimented upon, so they could never get their files and sue. And supposedly it was stopped, except it was such a broad program that there was never any one bill that said stop this. It was just that the exposure made everybody presume that the thing would be stopped. And you have to be very troubled and very skeptical. Not one person was punished. Not one person involved lost a paycheck or was censored or was fired or much less jailed for those, for the experimentation on American citizens with disease and drugs.
This is the Maui police chief, John Peltier. He came to Hawaii. This is Maui Do Fires is what we're talking about here. And then we're going to go into Bill Gates and how this is related, because this is a giant syndicate and it is a transhuman syndicate. So, and they're trying to bring in transhumanism and AI. So he came to Hawaii after 22 years in Las Vegas. He was the incident commander for the 2017 mass shooting that left over 50 dead.
Right.
So we're going to look at his reverse speech first.
When we find these, our family and our friends, see now.
His reversal there is seeding the ALF. ALF is a metaphor for an alien life form.
Okay.
It's talking about the AI. And so he says seeding the ALF. So when he was talking about finding these, so the interpretation there is connected to what is found is an AI being further embedded into our system. So he's bringing up the AI embedding. Bill Gates and this is kind of famous. Bill Gates and his wife were sitting there. This one, do you remember? And they were talking about how this time everybody's going to get their attention caught with what they were to prepare for the next pandemic. Do y'all remember this?
Right.
Yes. Okay. So the reverse speech there, he says, we will get attention this time. And his reversal right there is Maoist sin, this nest that I glue. Maoist sin. So he's talking.
Oh, wow.
Taken together.
Maoist sin, this nest that I glue. That's awful.
Sin, this nest that I glue. So they are trying to find a permanent home for the AI. And so they're rolling out an AI Maoist revolution across the planet.
Right.
Yes.
We'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is, will get attention this time.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the deep state. So I don't know if y'all remember this is John McLaughlin. He was former CIA director, and he's the one who was like, well, thank God for the deep state.
Right.
Now, the impeachment inquiry is underway, sparked by a complaint from someone within the intelligence community. It feeds the president's concern and often used term about a deep state being there to take him out.
Thank God for the deep state. I mean, I think, everyone here has seen this progression of diplomats and intelligence officers and White House people trooping up to Capitol Hill right now and saying, these are people who are doing their duty, who are responding to a higher call. Well, think about it for a minute. With all of the people who knew what was going on here, it took an intelligence officer to step forward and say something about it, which was the trigger that then unleashed everything else. Now, why does that happen? What I tell American people why that happens is this is the institution in the U.S. government that, with all of its flaws, and it makes mistakes, is institutionally committed to objectivity and to telling the truth. It is one of the few institutions in Washington that is not in a chain of command that makes or implements policy. Its whole job is to speak the truth. It's engraved in marble in the lobby.
Wow. Do y'all remember that? So when he was talking about that, I looked at his reverse speech. Right here is where I found the reversal. So the reversal is commenting on this part right here. When he says, is institutionally committed, he's talking about the U.S. government with all its flaws and mistakes, and he says, is institutionally committed to objectivity and to telling the truth. Now he's going to tell you the truth about that. in his reversal.
Right.
So he says, thirst, didn't you lust it, the id of it? Get Maoist the dim.
Dang.
Yeah. He'll want his shoes, did Snake say.
This is the institution in the U.S. government that, with all of its flaws, and it makes mistakes, is institutionally committed to objectivity and to telling the truth.
Okay, so now the interpretation for that is the institution is using cravings, and this is the mind control part, is using, and Jesse will be able to recognize this part because of all the stuff that he does with hypnosis. So the institution is using cravings, strong sexual drives, and unconscious instincts in a part of the psyche. So this appears to mean mind control. They're using that stuff when they're actually telling you they're telling the truth. This is the truth about it. So this appears to mean mind control. So the commitment of the intel situation, McLaughlin is in support of using mind control to create a Maoist revolution, basically.
Okay.
And it's coming through the Democrats as a vehicle as they move forward that goal using deception. So the word Maoist is also likely used because of another vehicle being used to get to this goal is China. But it's still all of these different masks, China, China, China. That's a different mask of the same syndicate that's global. They're talking about a Maoist revolution and mind control. And here is a specific example in my speech. So I was speaking to my cousin, and we had a signature reduction force, also known as gang stalkers, break into our cell phone conversation. And they were anchoring identity assault programming. So they were anchoring programming just subliminally. And I was like, did you hear that? Did you just hear that? And so here's one that he sang it out while my cousin and I were having a conversation. I was already recording the conversation because I had permission from my cousin, and we were doing some session work, and they broke into our conversation. There were two of them, and there was an EVP, which was interesting, electronic voice phenomenon.
Okay.
So this gang stalker, he goes, grow ID, right? And so, but when you flip it and listen to what he's saying, seek our orb. Orb means programming. So they wanted me to seek their programming. They wanted me to take their programming on board.
Okay.
So, and this reverse speech analysis, they were saying basically that they thought I was vulnerable, but they were having trouble getting me programmed. And so they were trying a fresh strategy. And one of the things they were doing was, breaking in and trying to anchor MK Ultra programming for me to take on their programming and ID. It's identity assault. They're assaulting your identity. So that was on a personal level what they're doing. And then we'll look over here and see, this is one that I found on Joe Biden. And so he's here trying to help you to trust him.
But today I want to talk about gestures of support and encouragement that I've made to women and some men that have made them uncomfortable. And I always try to be, in my career, I've always tried to make a human connection. That's my responsibility, I think. I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been.
And he says in this little video clip here that I found the reversal on, he says women, men, young, and old. Well, what about women, men, young, and old? That's everybody. Okay. He says, war on man nano.
Wow.
Women, men, young, old. War on man, never. War on man, never.
there is a nanotechnology war on man.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. So there was an Amazon van that came in 2020.
Hi.
Hey, how are you doing?
How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Hanging in there?
Yeah, trying to. I'm trying to see why this Prime van is sitting and not going anywhere.
This what?
Is that a Prime van? Amazon Prime van? Over there?
Yeah. What's it doing?
Sitting there.
And sitting and sitting and sitting. Well, that particular one, I've seen it every day for the past 4 days on that street.
And it came right after I published an important Ivanka Trump reversal.
Right.
That was indicating that they were trying to organize a mass kill. So then they sent an Amazon van that stayed there for over 5 days in a row, surveilling our house for 8 hours a day. And my neighbor walked by, and we were talking about it, and her reverse speech told me why the Amazon van was there. She didn't know consciously, but like I said, our consciousness is shared. So we have the ability to tap into whatever we want to just by virtue of the fact that we choose to talk about it. So she said, we were walking the other day, and I'm pretty sure that's the same one. She was talking about the Amazon van, but in her reverse speech, she is talking about something else. She says, now miss us, grow sheaf of night, data aggregate the cull, war you. So what does that mean? That means she's missing something. She's missing growing evil, where that Amazon van is connected, and the surveillance that's going on, and data that is being aggregated in a cull. So the AI is aggregating data for a cull on people who have declared war against us. So this is a war on humanity.
We were walking the other day, and I'm pretty sure it's that same one. No, miss, that's where she was right. Got it, everything the whole room. No, miss, that's where she was right. Got it, everything the whole room. No, miss, that's where she was right. Got it, everything the whole room.
And then here is Obama. Now this is from a clip from the O'Reilly Factor, and it was published on YouTube on his channel on June 9th, 2016. And so Obama is sitting here saying, he says, by almost every economic measure, America's better off than when I came here, right? So his reversal is going to tell us more about that. I pulled this reversal out October of 2019. He's commenting on by almost every economic measure. So almost every economic measure is going into creating all of this. Jesse actually found in the hotel that we were staying at, he found RF frequencies coming out of the lamps in 3 different rooms. I think they have worked this into the manufacturing already by this time. Has this been rolling out over time? Like since the 90s, it started getting very heavy. So he says, program human to keep human. So more ebb. He's saying around all these economic measures being put forth is programming humans. They're putting money into programming humans in order to keep a Stasi human network in place so that they can sow more decay.
By almost every economic measure, America's better off than when I came here at the beginning of my presidency.
No, they're not.
Almost every economic measure, America's better off than when I came here.
The model he created started off in Columbus, and now it's popped up in every major regional area of Ohio. So what he did initially is in the early 2000s, he made this public-private partnership called the Columbus Partnership, which later gave birth to various other entities, including what is now One Columbus and the Smart City Columbus, which is trying to turn Columbus into a test city for smart cities nationwide.
No.
But One Columbus replaced the Regional Economic Development Authority. It privatized it. And so then you have all these different public-private partnerships of the same model crop up later. And then you have one created in 2011 at the state level called Jobs Ohio. And Jobs Ohio is an extremely controversial organization, as it should be, because it's extremely egregious. This venture capitalist who's super cozy with Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn fame and also perhaps Epstein infamy, if you will, named Mark Kwame, paid former Governor John Kasich's campaign like over $1 million. And basically when Kasich got in, he put Kwame in charge of this corporation he created called Jobs Ohio that privatized the entire state's economic development authority. So basically, what Jobs Ohio did, it's a private corporation, and then it took control of this, what was formerly the state liquor tax. So the state liquor tax in Ohio, instead of going into the public coffers, is funneled into this private corporation that, because it's a private corporation, doesn't have to show the public at all how it spends its money. And they're basically the main engine now nationally, and then in conjunction with these regional public-private partnerships, funneling taxpayer money to these corporations. And that same Mark Kwame guy that I mentioned a second ago, who helped create Jobs Ohio, he has a new sovereign wealth fund, as he calls it, for the state of Ohio, that is funneling money into Wexner-connected initiatives and also into J.D. Vance's venture capital firm, Narya Capital. They're putting a giant data center in Sunbury, Ohio, even though locals don't want it. And they're, just going to shove it through anyway, which is pretty much what they've been doing throughout the state. It's actually a huge campaign issue now in Ohio because it's so controversial. But instead of actually listening to citizens, the Ohio State Legislature instead decided to pass a law creating a commission that will dispel inaccurate myths about data centers in Ohio. So people are just more comfortable with it, I guess. They're trying to privatize the whole government in the same way that has been promoted by people like Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel, who of course are pretty cozy with people like J.D. Vance. And what the Dark Enlightenment entails, and the best description of this that I can direct people to is Ian Davis's book, The Technocratic Dark State, which is about all of these people. The goal is basically to privatize the entire government and have it run by these sovereign corporations. So instead of the public sector, you would basically be a client of the sovereign corporation, which would be ruled by a CEO who functions as a dictator.
Can you talk about Jeffrey Epstein's involvement in this whole kind of project in Ohio?
Yeah, sure. So basically, Epstein was intimately involved in the New Albany project, this effort to create a master planned city versus a public-private partnership, and then basically de facto privatize it under the control of this company, which he was intimately involved with. And there's a lot of different data points regarding that. For example, Epstein courted top people from the New Albany company to help him design his island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He had people from New Albany manage his properties, including in the USVI and Zorro Ranch, which of course had been of major interest in the sex trafficking scandal. But New Albany somehow has gotten pretty much no scrutiny, even though you have Ghislaine Maxwell under oath saying that Epstein ran it. And he was clearly very involved in the company and had a lot of his financial businesses based there. But what's interesting too is that Epstein's involvement in New Albany overlaps with efforts by him via the Edge Foundation to court the CEOs and founders of a lot of the very same big tech companies that have now installed themselves all over New Albany, which is quite interesting. So that would include people like Mark Zuckerberg, that would include the Google co-founders, and then of course you have Jeff Bezos of Amazon having a pretty cozy relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. So there's direct overlap of Epstein meeting with these people, and when these companies decided to park their data centers in New Albany, Ohio, of all places. And this is something that Wexner has been doing for a really long time. So as I note in my book, I talk a lot about how Southern Air Transport was courted recruited by Wexner directly to relocate from Miami, Florida to Columbus, Ohio to run cargo for the Limited. And Southern Air Transport is most famous for being the CIA airline involved in Iran-Contra. They were previously directly owned by the CIA, but then owned by a CIA middleman named James Bastian, who had, I think, been a CIA banker or something. And so anyway, they attracted them to Ohio with all of these taxpayer-funded subsidies, and there were all these promises of all the jobs it was going to create. It didn't create any jobs. It basically came in, ran cargo for a couple of years at the same time that Epstein was meeting at the Clinton White House a bunch of times with a scandal in China, and the Columbus planes were going to China. But no one wants to talk about that, I guess. So yeah, basically there was a pump and dump of this company, and they never delivered on any of their promises, but Wexner had all this taxpayer money funneled into it to do really shady stuff for the Limited, apparently. Wexner is sitting dominating the areas where these data centers are that are extremely influential. And so he has, for one person, an unusual amount of influence over so many data centers. How many people can you say basically own a private government that oversees 121 data centers in the United States that are tied to some of the biggest, most important big tech corporations in the world that also double as military and intelligence contractors? And how many of those people in that category were also funding someone that was a sex trafficker linked to U.S. and Israeli intelligence?
So this video is super important. This is basically the method that they're going to use to try to take over, basically FEMA style, if you know what that means.
Meantime, we're following this question. Did the FBI use its counterterrorism division to target parents protesting COVID mandates at school boards? Well, 2 congressional Republicans say they have evidence proving they did.
It all happened after 9/11, where they created the Patriot Act, where basically they said they can do whatever they want when it comes to terrorism, and they left the definition of terrorism really open. Since then, they've shifted more towards domestic terrorism, and they're using something called fusion centers, where it's all the agencies, all the law enforcement agencies together, combined, basically utilizing information they grab from us. They actually tap our phone calls, check our social media. It's all done through AI algorithms, but the fusion centers is where all of that fuses together.
Its description of what you can do with metadata, and quoting a mutual friend, Stuart Baker, is absolutely correct. Okay, we kill people based on metadata.
We work very closely with the Jewish federations throughout the country.
Now, they knew that the leaders of society, the leaders of the normies, the people with decent-sized companies would be able to lead rebellion. So they knew they had to get them and flip them on their side so that their takeover would be fluent. So they created something called InfraGard, and this was back in 1998 or 1996 that this was created. InfraGard grabs all of the private sector businesses, which is just private businesses, and the heads of those, and puts them as part of this specific organization where they get information before we do. If there's going to be a nuclear threat, they would get that information before you do. They also gave them permission to use deadly force when it comes to martial law. So they are basically prepping them all the insider information. It's like a secret meeting, almost exactly like the one that Dr. Carrie Madej brought up in our interview. Check out this clip from that right here.
You said that you were invited to a VIP business owners meeting, I'm assuming because you've owned your own medical clinic. You said this meeting was where they discussed their plans to conspire to destroy America. You clearly disagreed and voiced your thoughts and blew the whistle telling the world about the meeting. What were the qualifying factors for somebody to get an invite to that meeting? And can you elaborate on what that was like for you? What kind of things were going through your mind when you realized what was really going on?
I know that two different people had referred me. You have to be referred into the group, and then they do background check and all kinds of things before they approve you to be into the group.
Who's qualified to be Infraguard? It's a very secretive club, and to get into the club, you got to be recommended by a member of the club.
Now, I had no idea what this group was about. I thought it was just like a Chamber of Commerce kind of thing where, you just shake hands and just make relationships. So when I went to this one meeting, which was probably one of the most important meetings, there was a divine appointment that I happened to go to that one meeting that obviously blew my mind away. And exactly why I was accepted to go there, I still don't understand it completely.
And no one else would probably know about the meeting if you weren't there. So was there anyone else there that also spoke out, or did most people just go along with it?
Not at all. They all were clapping and standing ovation.
Our projections show that by the year 2025, not only America, but the entire planet will be under the protection and the dominion of this power alliance. The gains have been substantial, both for ourselves and for you, the power elite. You have given us entree to the resources we need in our ongoing quest for expansion. And in return, the per capita income of each of you here tonight has grown, and this year alone, by an average 39%. And I've just received word that our forces have won a major victory. The underground terrorist network has been destroyed here on the West Coast. We are off crisis alert.
How you doing, boys? I didn't know you'd been recruited. Welcome aboard.
And then the ones that did admit that there was, it was probably not humane, they gave the excuse that you can't stop what's about to happen around the world. And if you're not on our side, you're on the other side, and you're not going to want to be on that side. If you don't join us, you will soon. Because when you see what's coming.
I thought you boys understood. It's business. That's all it is. There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything, the whole goddamn planet. They can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? Now they're going to let us have it good if we just help them. They're going to leave us alone. Let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life too. Now I know you want it. Hell, everybody does. Do it to your own kind. What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.
All right, now check this out. NEC is a company that's partnered with Infraguard, and they're all the biometrics that they're already rolling out in places like Hawaii. Things like thermal temperature scanning in airport, facial recognition ID. This is the company that's going to do the rollout. You're going to want to look into them. Just keep in mind they're going to do two things. One, have a medical pandemic to take over, and two, they're going to use digital currency to control everything, and they're actually going to roll that out. And keep in mind they have biometric stuff like a palm vein reader that you're going to see in this video. So sit tight, check this out.
Ways to prevent future acts with Maureen O'Connell. She is a former FBI special agent who's been with the agency for 25 years. And Maureen, thank you for being here. As we move forward in these tense times, of course, there is, if you see something, say something. Is there a way, Maureen, in any way for law enforcement to further train the general public to detect and report suspicious items or activity? Yes, many of the fusion centers throughout the country, and there are quite a few, have the capability for you to submit tips and leads, whether you want to do them anonymously or not.
Let me get this straight. She campaigns for a legitimate presidential candidate. What's more American than that? Yet she's labeled a threat? Something's not right. I thought we had a constitution that protects against that. Well, fear trumps freedom every time.
Well, it actually involves the Department of Homeland Security and these institutions that have been popping up all over the country called fusion centers. Have you heard of those?
After 9/11, Homeland Security and the Justice Department set them up in cities around the country. Command centers that gather and analyze information from government agencies, police departments, and private sources, supposedly to prevent terrorism.
You can reach out to your local law enforcement. You can join a group. For example, the FBI has their public-private sector outreach program that is 58,000 members strong throughout the nation with over 80 chapters. And you can reach out to them. That gives you a vehicle to provide information and to get training training, really crucial training, that helps you identify things in the category that we call left of bang, or before these incidents happen. How do you get in touch with them? You can go to www.infraguard.org.
The group that's turning everyday Americans into Big Brother spies, and the government is letting corporations do its spy work. It's clear that the ones we entrust with our freedoms are selling out you and me to the highest bidders.
It's called InfraGuard, and it's made up of 30,000 ordinary US citizens. And what happens is the FBI gives them classified information, and they then have to report back anything suspicious. And the scary thing is, it could be anybody, even a member of your family, and you don't know they belong to this organization.
They're asking citizens to become profilers and rat out their neighbors?
Yeah, spies.
This is an outrage. I am outraged. Is this Nazi Germany we're talking about? I mean, we're going to have kids ratting their parents, neighbors ratting against their neighbors, and the government is setting all this up? I don't like this a bit. We need to learn more about this.
And this organization is sponsored by the FBI, and so we have input and training from subject matter experts from all over the country. Everyone is vetted, and we work very closely with DHS, with every other three-letter agency, as well as the local law enforcement agencies, to help put on just really valuable training. I went to a training yesterday morning on explosives from a world-class bomb tech, specifically geared toward private sector, and we put on training like pre-incident indicators. We work very closely with the Jewish federations throughout the country. They've developed just cutting-edge, innovative ways to combat the hatred that we're seeing in this country. Should social media outlets that allow posts containing hatred, bigots, and threatening messages, bigotry and threatening messages fall under the jurisdiction of authorities and law enforcement instead of under the banner of free speech? I think free speech, and from an investigative standpoint, I will tell you that, all the years I worked cases, I like to know what people are talking about, and I like to know who they're talking to. So I think it might be important to keep those channels open, even if you are monitoring them very closely. So, good point. Let them show their hands, is what you're saying. Correct.
The whole Curtis Yarvin, Teal, Dark Enlightenment idea of like a private company being ruled by a CEO dictator.
Not permitted enough.
As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA. Nice. Well, first of all, I want to say what an honor it is to be here. Hurry, he consider and I don't miss it else. Hurry, he consider and I don't miss it else. Hurry, he consider and I don't miss it else. The true test. The true test of someone's character is how they behave under fire. Alfred not be a Alfred not be a Alfred not be a
I don't want to set the world on fire.
It's tyranny in motion.
Fourth generational warfare.
That's terrifying you and me.
Manipulating someone online.
Manufacturing emotion.
I like that.
Propaganda is persuading me. They guided me with psyops.
Psychological operations.
They guided me with psyops. They weaponize psychology. Yeah.
201 mass shootings, and it's only May.
The truth.
This will be weaponized.
When I'm watching news of war.
That disinformation.
False flag operations.
Internet trolls.
Disinformation.
Psyops.
A psychological operation. Accessing and affecting the brain.
Unelected criminals.
Propaganda. It's become a tool of war.
Psyops.
PSYOP.
Psyops. Well, now I gotta drink the potion. If I want normality, they lead me by emotion.
Painfully evident.
I must obey the TV screen.
Psyops.
They guided me with psyops.
Voice to skull, that's a real thing.
They gaslight me with psyops. I'm following the programming. Hey, 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 hey. Just look at my Twitter feed.
Fighting misinformation.
Psyops.
I mean, that's basically what Wexner did in New Albany.
And
but
so-
he didn't use any of those words for it at the time.
So how is it that they haven't received more, how is this possible that it's allowed to happen? A, B, how has it not gotten more scrutiny? And C, why don't the people, what do the people of New Albany think about this? Take it however you want to take that.
Well, just look at a person who was a front man, arguably, for Wexner in related interests, Jeffrey Epstein, and look to the lengths that the federal government has gone to cover that up, and also to cover up any sort of scrutiny of Leslie Wexner. That when he was deposed by Congress recently, that was the first time he was ever deposed in this case. I mean, that's insane. And they went to his house to do it. He didn't even have to go to DC. Normally, if you're deposed as part of a major sex trafficking, huge, massive scandal of great media interest and public interest, people don't come to your house to nicely interview you.
And so, what does that tell you about his power, and how does he get that power?
Well, I think he has that power because he's an extremely rich and powerful man. And I think, just like Epstein, as I've noted extensively in my work on him and on his case, was linked to a lot of shady financial actors and very powerful people, including Rothschild banking interests, former heads of state, former top officials. Wexner presumably has a lot of those same ties. And he was never investigated, even when his tax attorney was shot in the face days before he was supposed to testify to the IRS. The document linking Wexner to that and linking Wexner to organized crime was destroyed by the police chief who was supposed to investigate it. So this is something that's been going on for a very long time, and routinely, I think it should be clear at this point that the U.S. federal government is not really interested in investigating white-collar crime because it works on behalf and serves the white-collar criminals who pay for politicians and pay their campaigns and fly them on their private jets and give them special privileges. And then the politicians, when they're in office, give them a return on their investment. Let's put it that way. And the investments are bribes or, indirect bribes. And actually, as I note in the article, Ohio's largest corruption scandal and bribery scandal ever, the first energy or HB6 scandal, is tied up directly with this group and with Wexner. It happened just a few years ago. I think the story broke in 2020, and two of the main people have ended up dead. So one of them is a lobbyist that used to work for Wexner in the New Albany company and was tied to this company, First Energy. And First Energy basically bribed a bunch of people in the Ohio state government to push through legislation that bailed out a bunch of their nuclear and I think a coal-powered power plant with taxpayer money. And the amount of bribes they spent is dwarfed by how much money they got as part of the bailout. So that was a great return on investment, quote unquote, for them. But one of the people that was arrested as part of that scandal for racketeering and other things, Neil Clark, just was found in the woods near his house with a bullet to the head. It was quickly ruled a suicide, and he used to work for Wexner in New Albany. And who do you think really wants these nuclear power plants functioning? AI data centers.
Oh, because they need the power.
They need the power.
And
because the power demand's only going to go up, and they're courting more and more data centers to Ohio all the time. And taxpayers are funding all of this. And this is really a microcosm of what's going on a bigger scale. Basically, there's a wealth transfer going on. Regular people's wealth is being drained to build infrastructure that will enslave them, basically.
So they've created these private-public partnerships, which is always a mark of evil, if you ever hear that term, private-public partnerships. And they're taking the money that people pay in taxes to build a techno state that will enslave them through mass surveillance and through the implementation of 15-minute cities. Is that what you mean by that?
This group is also tied to the efforts to bring, digital finance to Ohio, and also to bring digital ID to Ohio and all of that infrastructure. Yeah, absolutely. Ohioans already have digital ID. It's called Ohio ID. It was created by Innovate Ohio, which was this board created by the same governor that made Jobs Ohio. The guy that basically bought out the governor to create Jobs Ohio was on the board, and also on the board was J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, a lot of these same figures. The current head of it right now is the co-founder of J.D. Vance's venture capital firm, Narya Capital, which was financed by Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt of Google and all of these would-be overlords. So they basically were tasked with, quote unquote, modernizing the Ohio state government, and that includes giving everyone in Ohio a digital ID if they want to access government services or interact with the state. And Mike DeWine, the current governor, issued an executive order forcing all state agencies to onboard onto the Innovate Ohio platform, controlled by people that are intimately tied to the big tech crowd.
So this sounds exactly like what Steve Bannon was alerting us to when he came on our show. This is these guys getting together.
Well,
go ahead.
Sure. I think there's a lot of people that have been warning about it. I personally haven't listened to Steve Bannon's take on it. I'm a little unsettled by how close he was to Jeffrey Epstein. And as someone that writes a lot about Jeffrey Epstein, I prefer not to go there. But a lot of people have been warning about this for a long time. And, the dark Enlightenment crowd, was hugely behind Trump in his 2024 campaign and now his second term. A lot of big people that are that openly embrace that idea were just appointed to the White House's new Science and Technology Advisory Board, announced today. People like Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg, it's Sergey Brin.
Wow, it's all of them. That's all.
Well, there's more. I can't remember the whole list.
Yeah,
right now.
but I mean, it's like all the main players. This is
a lot of the main ones.
Yeah,
and the overlap between those main players and Epstein is pretty considerable. I mean, Peter Thiel and Epstein were planning to create a secret society together. They were business partners. Epstein apparently had control over this, what was a Thiel VC firm fund, Valor Ventures 3, which put all this money into Anduril, which is a Thiel-backed autonomous drone and weapon manufacturer, which luck would have it, just got a huge deal via Jobs Ohio to install themselves at the very airport that Wexner and Epstein brought Southern Air Transport to back in the 90s. Now it's going to be the Anduril airfield. Pretty cool.
Wow. This almost seems unbelievable, right?
It does, but I would encourage people to go and read this piece and talk to people in Ohio who are trying to fight against the data centers and exactly the kind of resistance they're receiving, despite how unpopular they are.
So
clearly, the government there is functioning without regard to what the public wants. They don't care.
Well, that just sounds like America.
Well, sure, but my point is that Ohio is where most states will end up going if nothing is done, because they are advancing this model there much more quickly. They are taking people's land much more quickly, their water, making their electricity bills go through the roof, and they are pushing through all of these subsidies, tax abatements, tax exemptions, incentives packages, while gutting everything good that the public sector does, from public schools to any sort of publicly funded healthcare program. It is all being gutted across the board. Ohio State says they don't have any money for those things, but they have plenty of money for data centers.
So I had Derek Broads on the show, and he's talked about this techno state, and he talked about how this isn't a new idea, that this was actually started by Elon Musk's grandfather, and that this since World War II, they've had this idea for a greater northern, just like the Greater Israel Project, they have the Greater American Project, and they want to make it all a techno state. They've had this idea.
A technate, yeah.
A technate. They've had this idea since after World War II. Are you familiar with that? Is this kind of like the fruition of that?
So I'm familiar, yeah. So the reference there, it's Elon Musk's grandfather who was in Canada, Joshua Hadelman, I believe his name was, and he was head of the Canadian branch of what was known as Technocracy Inc., which was originally created in the U.S., not in Canada, but had some traction in the post World War II era. And the authority on them for a long time has been Patrick Wood, who's was talking about them, I think, before anyone else was. There's a lot of interesting things to be garnered from looking there and looking at the parallels today. But beyond that, I think this particular more current crowd of would-be technocrats who, fancy themselves accelerationists or darkly enlightened people or whatever, they basically, the interest at this point is using technology as an enforcement tool, really, to create a private corporation built on surveillance capitalism. And they say if you don't like the service offered to you by a SovCorp, you can move somewhere else. But what would the real difference be in moving from a Mark Zuckerberg smart city to a Jeff Bezos smart city to a Sergey Brin smart city? I really don't think that's the winning, quote unquote, free market move there. I think ultimately we're being marketed this. And even if they don't have, the public opinion on board, which with a lot of this they don't, they're feeding us endless distractions and psyops and other things to keep us from paying attention to what's happening in people's backyards. And so in the case of Ohio, if you live in Ohio, this is happening in your backyard. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse unless people locally organize and find a way to stop these. And if you know any farmers nearby you that have been approached by the New Albany company or any of these other companies that are part of this network to sell their land, they should say no. And there was actually a recent story of this happening in Kentucky where a farming family were approached, with millions of dollars in offers for their land, and they said no because they didn't want to have a data center on it. If you're against the world that big tech is building, we should not be allowing these data centers to be funded by us, and also to be destroying our libraries and public schools and all of these things, and paying insane power bills just so Leslie Wexner is getting what he wants. It's honestly crazy. But again, it's not exclusive to Ohio. This is happening in other states. Texas and California have tons of data centers, and presumably it will be more very soon. And I think Virginia is also, in the top 4. So there's plenty of states where this battle is being had, and the more distracted we are, the less people are going to be paying attention to what's happening locally. I one of the people that contributes to my website, Unlimited Hangout, just told me the other day that his community is being bought up basically by data centers. This is something that's going to continue, and it's not going to go away. And if you consider that data is the new oil, as has been said for a few years. Well, remember all those protests about oil pipelines a few decades ago?
Yep.
And how people were treated when they tried to stand up against the man. Well, it's not oil pipelines anymore. It's data centers. Data centers are polluting the environment. They are raising people's electricity rates. And
so did they just pass a law, or was it just an executive order that stops local municipalities and states from regulating this kind of AI?
I know it was telegraphed by Trump that was the plan.
Yeah.
And then I think that was also in the big, beautiful bill, as it was called, a line that would prevent local and state regulation. Yeah, because they want it at the federal level, and they want it to be designed with Trump's newly announced science advisors, Jimmy, who include people that have all these data centers.
What is their obsession with people live in 15-minute cities?
So I haven't written extensively about 15-minute cities, but I would argue that the goal there is basically to have people more or less corralled into an area where they're easily surveilled and controlled. And that's basically the interest here. The interest here is how do a small few rule the many forever without the many ever being able to complain or do anything about it. And so ultimately, this ruling system that they've been attempting to impose on people really around the world, because this is a global governance project at the end of the day, is, using big tech tools in mass surveillance to basically create an entirely new way of life and system of living. And part of that is to basically reduce the share of what the many, i.e. the 99% or whatever, have. So, a lot of this became extremely unpopular, but also people learned about it during the COVID era because of these groups like the World Economic Forum, which, by the way, bills itself as the premier promoter of public-private partnership, that we need to not own our cars, we need to rent them, and there should be autonomous fleets of Ubers that drive everyone around a specific radius. We shouldn't own homes. We should, rent apartments and then share those apartments when we're not there and we leave. Someone else can occupy the space. These were all things that were promoted under the guise of sustainability and other things at the time, but they're actively being designed and acted upon. Actually, one of the Columbus Smart City initiatives that's connected to this Columbus partnership that Wexner ran, he chaired it basically from 2001, I think, until 2021. So 20 years, including when this was created. Columbus got a huge Department of Transportation grant from the government, and also, funding from private individuals, probably Wexner, but who knows, to basically create a new system that in Columbus where private car ownership would not exist, and instead it would be fleets of smart cars, autonomous cars that drive people around. And so if you lose private car ownership, you can't really control where you go. So these cars would determine, would have specific routes that you could pay to use and what have you. And interestingly enough, this was actually a goal for the entire United States, described by this National Security Commission on AI, which was chaired by Eric Schmidt of Google, and had a lot of these same big tech guys who have major roles at companies with New Albany data centers. And they basically said that in order for the U.S., they said, to beat China in AI, it was necessary to end private car ownership in the United States and instead have autonomous Waymos basically drive fleets of them, Uber everybody around to where they were supposed to go, and have things sort of planned out by AI.
Hard to see the light when everything's right and waiting for it to clear. Think while I'm alive, get terrified but hey, I'm still here. In the daytime, I like it when what's so beautiful.